Well, what is it based on, and how does it fit into our experience? That is, cause and effect. Well, first let's look at his assertion that all of our reasoning about matters of fact, rather than the relations of ideas, depends upon cause and effect. That's not entirely true, I guess. That is, my knowledge of certain matters of fact, the ones that are directly in front of me, the ones that are part of my direct sense experience, I don't need, I guess, cause and effect. But give the example, where is it, of a man who, you'll see it, believes that his friend is in France. His friend is abroad. He's a Scotsman writing, so France is a fine country. That's a matter of fact. And how does he reason to that fact, or what does that belief rest on? It rests on the belief that, he received a letter in the mail. And that letter in the mail was caused to be there by various, I guess, intermediary causes. But ultimately the cause being his friend is in France and mailed the letter. That is, that there's a connection between him receiving a letter and his friend being in France. And when we think about it, most of our knowledge of the world is actually like that. That is, it's indirect knowledge of matters of fact based upon some primary experience that we have. I have the primary experience of watching television a year ago, in 2008, and following the election. And I believe that experience gives me knowledge as a matter of fact that Barack Obama is president. And I believe that because I believe that somehow his being elected president is causally connected with the images and words that I heard on the television. So I think he's really thinking of that, is that most of our knowledge of the world is indirect. It depends upon there being, or we assume, a causal connection between what we directly experience and what we don't really experience at all, except indirectly through what we do directly experience. So, absolutely vital, the relationship of cause and effect. But what is it actually based on? And what validity does it have, and so forth? Well, the first thing that he really wants to emphasize is that we think about the relation of cause and effect, that is, if we simply analyze one idea, there's no way that just by looking at that one idea that we will be able to reason to either it's causing something else or it's being caused by something else. That is, it's being a cause or an effect. Let's see if we can find a good quote for that. He says on page 7 in the second paragraph, he says, were any object presented to us, and were we required to pronounce concerning the effect, which will result from it, without consulting past observation, after what manner, I beseech you, must the mind proceed in this operation? It must invent or imagine some event, which it ascribes to the object as its effect, and it is plain that this invention must be entirely arbitrary. The mind can never possibly find the effect in the supposed cause by the most accurate scrutiny and examination. For the effect is totally different from the cause, and consequently can never be discovered in it. Motion in the second billiard ball, he's given this example of one billiard bar hitting another and then the second billiard ball moving. Motion in the second billiard ball is a quite distinct event from motion in the first, nor is there anything in the one to suggest the smallest hint of the other. Now, as he says, it seems the most natural thing in the world that when we see one billiard ball in motion moving towards another at rest, and when the first one strikes the second and the second one begins to move, the most natural thing in the world is to say that the first billiard ball caused the second billiard ball to begin to be in motion. However, the motion of the first, he says, is an entirely distinct thing from the motion of the second, and you can't logically derive the necessity of the second one being in motion from it being struck by the first. That is, it's not something that could be derived from one idea or another. So what does it depend upon? It depends upon past experience. He says at the top of that page, page 7, he says, we fancy that were we brought on a sudden into this world, that is, if we just sort of dropped into the world with no prior experience of it, we fancy we could at first have inferred, logical idea of inference, we could at first have inferred that one billiard ball would communicate motion to another upon impulse, and that we needed not to have waited for the event in order to pronounce with certainty concerning it. Such is the influence of custom. Such is the influence of custom. It's custom. It's habit. It's our native, almost animal instinct, which is, as he says, he respects very much because he says it's absolutely the most practical thing in the world and we need it to survive, but it's our almost animal disposition or instinct to believe that the future will be like the past. We have seen similar things before, maybe not billiard balls, but we have seen things in motion hit things at rest, and then the things at rest begin to be in motion. And our expectation and the naturalness of the motion of the second billiard ball after being struck by the first one in motion, it depends entirely on our past experience and our expectation that things in the future will resemble things in the past, or that the world will behave in the future the way that it behaves in the past. Now, we don't really fundamentally can't explain why one thing in motion imparts motion to another. We can study physics and we can describe it, but as Hume says, the powers, whatever secret causes are at work, are mostly unknown to us. And we work by habit or custom. Just to give you a few examples of what he says, to guide you through the reading, bottom of page 8, part 2 at the bottom. What is the nature of all our reasonings concerning matter of fact? The proper answer seems to be that they are founded on the relation of cause and effect. When again it is asked, what is the foundation of all our reasonings and conclusions concerning that relation, that is the relation of cause and effect, it may be replied in one word, experience. Not experience directly of the cause, but experience of one thing regularly following another, or one thing regularly preceding another. That is, custom, experience. It's not so much that we have a really firm notion of what cause and effects are. Nothing of the sort. We have a very firm notion, I guess, of regularity, of how the world is supposed to behave, and having observed it behave one way in the past, we expect it to behave a similar way in the future. It says on page 9, about halfway through the page, but notwithstanding this ignorance of natural powers and principles, we always presume, when we see like sensible qualities, similar sensible qualities, that they have like or similar secret powers, and expect that effects similar to those we have experienced will follow from them. Now, this is a process of the mind or thought of which I would willingly know the foundation. The foundation, as he says, is custom or habit, and we'll say a few more things about that in the next video.